Welcome everyone who has joined us today from all over Asia and Europe for our country-focused workshop series, Navigating Science and Technology Diplomacy Ecosystems on Malaysia, and this second workshop on the role of academia and research institutions in Malaysia. Organised in partnership with the International Institute for Science, Diplomacy and Sustainability at UCSI University and the Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology. My name is Freya Chow-Poole, and I'm the Youth Project Lead here at the Asia-Europe Foundation, ASEF, and today I have the pleasure of guiding us through today's session. At this point, please allow me to give everyone a brief run-through of what we have prepared for you for this 2-hour session. I will begin with a short introduction to this initiative before handing over to Prof. Mohammed Osman to share his introductory lecture. This will be followed by a panel discussion and Q&A with distinguished guests who are ready to share their insights and perspective on the role of academia and research institutions in the intersection between science, innovation, technology, policy, and diplomacy. For the Q&A session, you will all have the opportunity to share your thoughts and ask questions. For this purpose, you can use the Q&A function on your Zoom panel, where you can pose your questions, upvote any of those that you find interesting, or even reply to them directly and engage in a discussion. We will also be asking you to answer a few polls throughout the workshop, so we look forward to hearing your input through this. Without further ado, we can get started. So, firstly, what is the context of this workshop? As many of you will know, ASEF is an intergovernmental organization working to strengthen mutual understanding between Asia and Europe. Across different thematic areas, we bring together a variety of governmental and civil society stakeholders to further strengthen the connectivity and opportunities for collaboration to solve global challenges between the regions. Recently, we've been focused on furthering this goal within the field specifically of science and technology diplomacy. And in 2024, we conducted a mapping exercise of the different science and technology diplomacy strategies across Asian and European countries. And we produced a report from this. Following this report, we now wish to give the spotlight to a number of countries who are actively contributing to the field of science and technology diplomacy, be able to help more stakeholders across Asia and Europe, understand how the ecosystem within that country works and how they can collaborate together, looking at 3 aspects of this ecosystem: government, academia, and private sector. So we're very happy today to be here looking at Malaysia's academia and research sector. With that, I believe we are ready for the first segment of the workshop on the role of academia and research institutions in Malaysia's science and technology diplomacy ecosystem. So to set the scene and provide an overview of the academic and research landscape in Malaysia, I would like to introduce Prof. Mohammed Osman, who will deliver an introductory presentation for us. Prof. Mohammed is the Deputy Director of the International Institute of Science, Diplomacy and Sustainability at UCSI. Prof. Osman has over 4 decades of experience in genetics, biosafety, and international science negotiations. He's held academic and leadership positions at institutions such as MADI, UKM, UPM, and IIUM. He served as the co-chair in the negotiations on access and benefit sharing under the Convention on Biological Diversity, and has been Malaysia's lead negotiator for biodiversity and biosafety protocols. His academic training spans agricultural genetics and plant breeding, with degrees from UC Davis and University of Wisconsin-Madison. Prof. Mohammed remains active in the UN Convention on Biological Diversity processes and is a key figure in advancing biosafety and environmental diplomacy in Malaysia and beyond. Thank you very much for joining us today, Prof. Mohammed. We look forward to hearing your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Freya. Good day, good morning, and good afternoon to all who are in this webinar. I can see quite a big number here. I'm very happy to be invited to give a lecture on the topic relating to the academia and research and their contributions to the development of science diplomacy. I have actually tweaked a little bit the title of my presentation. So I have cut short the title to science diplomacy, although science also includes the technology. So before I proceed further, my wishes also to the panelists, Prof. Khatijah, Prof. Abi, my colleagues, Prof. Kushari, and also Prof. Surin. Yeah? So I think all of them will be involved in the panel discussions later on after I have delivered my presentation. Taking it forward from the last presentation by Prof. Zakri, who introduced the subject of science diplomacy, I will now add a little bit more and focus on the role of academia and research in developing science diplomacy ecosystem in Malaysia as well as globally. Next. Just to guide the presentation, I have here 8 points which I think would give a clean cut on the topic that I'll discuss this afternoon. One is to introduce again science diplomacy. I think Prof. Zakri has done justice very well introducing the subject matter, but I'll give my own perspective. Number two, we have heard a lot about diplomacy. We have heard also about science advice. So how do we differentiate between diplomacy, science diplomacy, and also science advice? I think this is very important so that we are on the right track. Number three, this is a big chunk of our presentation today. We are talking about contribution of science, technology, and innovation. And these are very critical in terms of fulfilling or achieving sustainable development. So how do we use this STI for that purpose? I will zero in on the roles of academia, especially what is happening in Malaysia. Also, research institutions that are in Malaysia. And finally, after we have set the background or the knowledge about academia and research in Malaysia, we'll see is Malaysia in position to move much more in terms of developing science diplomacy. And finally, we look at some of the recent global initiatives that have been taking place in the last 1 year or so in science diplomacy and how we can actually move forward from here. Next. Okay, there's a question that we'll bring forward later on to ask the participants whether you know about science diplomacy. I think this is very important. I think if you ask different people, they have different views. But today, what I will do is to go back again and come out with something that you can remember, well, So I think if you look at the definition, we are actually using science as a tool for us to make negotiations. Yeah, science has always been in the lab. So what we want to do is to bring science into negotiation tables to achieve many things, including sustainable development. So this is essentially the definition, leveraging scientific collaboration to strengthen international relations. So the main ingredient there is actually science. And we can use science in three approaches, as Prof. Zakri mentioned last week. Science in diplomacy, where we inform foreign policy with scientific advice, or we can use diplomacy for science. That is to facilitate international scientific cooperation. And lastly, science for diplomacy, using scientific collaboration to improve relations. So this might sound very tricky, but later on you can see a little bit more clearly. Next slide. Okay, even though it is in a nutshell, it's a lot of wording inside. But I think if you read it well, you can understand why we are interested in science diplomacy. So let me read the first sentence. Science diplomacy leverages scientific collaboration to strengthen international relations, tackle global challenges, and to foster peace by transcending political divides through shared knowledge while advancing sustainable development. It's a mouthful there. But I think at the end, we are going to use science for that purpose. Next slide. So many people ask, what is the difference between science diplomacy and diplomacy? And what is also the difference between science diplomacy and science advice? So it's quite subtle, but if you can look at the graphics, next slide. Okay, we have known diplomacy for a long time. Yeah. So I think if you talk to ministries of foreign affairs, this is the tool that they use to do their job, And when they have bilateral negotiations or multilateral negotiations, they usually use the government officials. This is G to G negotiations. Why? Because of the goals like the importance of security and defense, the importance of national interest, and so on and so forth. But for many years, the planetary well-being, when we're talking about sustainable development, for example, this is last in the list. So even though they are interested, but diplomacy is not a tool for that purpose. Now, you can see one flag. Basically, diplomacy involves many types of bilateral. Of course, there are multilateral negotiations, but mostly they are bilateral. You can see the one flag there. Next slide. Now, you look at science diplomacy, you can see a lot of flags there. So meaning that many countries will be involved. So you bring to the negotiation tables a lot of countries, and you really develop the science policy nexus to be able to bring about science into policy making. Now, the goals have changed slightly because we are talking about global commitments, multilateral initiatives, and so on. Whereas the security and defense will come much down in the list. So we are talking about planetary well-being. So all these need negotiations between and among many countries. Next slide. Of course, you also hear about science advice. And you can see just one flag there, meaning that science advice is basically, by definition, should be prioritizing information from science for policy in a country. This is the rigid definition. But of course, if you look at the literature, some literature, they use interchangeably, science diplomacy and science advice. But by definition, this is what many people think it should be. So you can be a science advisor, and also you can also be a science diplomat. 2 jobs at one go. Yeah, next. Okay, recently, the institute, IISD, has launched a book. I think this was written by Professor Zakri together with me. And we try to put in as much information to make the picture clearer. You know? This is available both in hard copies and also in soft copies. So those who want to learn a little bit more about science diplomacy at this juncture, I think it's good that you can have a hold on this publication. Next one. Okay, the topic here, we are talking about science and technology. For what? For achieving sustainable development. So science, I think most of you know, a simple definition is systematic study of the natural world. Anything you do, you ask, you know, about what is happening around us. This is a science, you know. And technology is application of that particular knowledge that you get from science for practical purposes. We have some examples later on. And the third one is innovation. So once you have these ideas coming from science, you can translate these ideas into goods and services that create value. So normally we say about science, technology, and innovation. And finally, all these have the common goal of achieving the sustainable development, which is meeting the present needs without compromising the future. Next. I hope you can read this small print, but here we have the elements of the science, technology, and innovation. But if I can read it out clearly, science is actually for understanding natural phenomena. Yeah, that's the reason why we do a lot of studies. Technology is applying scientific knowledge practically from what we learn. Yeah? And innovation is creating value through new ideas. Yeah? So there are examples there. I think perhaps we can have a look later on, yeah, when we have the time. But there are many examples. So for example, IPCC is considered a science because you're learning about climate change. Of course, people talk about genetics, vaccination, and so on. These are also science, you know, and so on and so forth. Next. Okay, let me go back to our main topic for today, the roles of academia in science diplomacy. So to make it short, I just give you a list here, what academia can achieve. So one is to bridge policy and scientific research. I think this looks very easy, you know? You just make a bridge so that you can cross over from one side to the other. But this is the most difficult thing to do because those who make policies and those who do scientific research are different groups of people. And when they come to negotiation tables, you don't have these two groups together. So we need to bridge whatever the scientific research has done with policymakers. So we need a structure for this. You know, I mentioned about science policy nexus. This could be one way of bridging policy and scientific research. Number two, we can, through academia, facilitate international research collaborations. There are many examples of this. And you bring about people, scientists from all over the world to do collaborations. I will give you examples later on, but there is a big role to be played by academia for this. So it's very difficult for one country to be able to do all type of research in this whole world. You have limited resources, you have limited human resources, scientists and so on. So we need to connect with those that can do research together. Number 3 is to advocate using whatever evidence we have for policy making. What this means is that policy making is not an automatic thing to do, you know. They have to be given enough evidence, and we need not only putting the evidence on the table, but trying to massage what kind of evidence that are good for policy making. Yeah. Number 4, training future science diplomats. I think this is a very interesting topic. I think this is the way to go. A lot of things can be resolved through science diplomacy, but we don't have enough science diplomats for that purpose. So how to make a good science diplomat will take a lot of discussion, you know. Last one is promoting public engagement in science policy issues. I think we have a lot of NGOs that are concerned about science and also policy, and how we can get the academia to help in this regard. Next slide. Okay, that is a component of academia, but it's also a component of research. I think in many countries we have a lot of research going on, and this the contributions are also important, you know, in developing science diplomacy. So I just read very quickly here. 1, to facilitate international scientific collaboration, like what we have also for academia. So the collaboration can come not only from academia, but also from researchers. Number 2, to advance science-based policy and diplomacy. Like I said, there are a lot of science that we need to bring on the table to be used as the tool for negotiation. Number 3, building capacity and knowledge exchange. Number 4, promoting science for peace and conflict resolution. There are some examples later on. And enhancing national reputation and soft power. I think there are many countries in the world that excel in research. So they are very well known, you know. So many of these countries, they put in a lot of resources in capacity building so that they have good research that can be used for policy making later on. Next. Okay, you can have a glance at some of the examples I have put in here. These are the same points which I raised just now. Roles of academia in science diplomacy. So we can get examples at the international level, at the regional level, and also at the national level. So here I have mentioned about this IPCC. You know, IPCC is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they use a lot of information from the scientists, and they use this to shape the Paris Agreement, for example. So thousands and thousands of documents go into making, for example, why we need to cap our temperature not more than 1.5 degrees centigrade, for example. Yeah, and then we have the regional example of the ASEAN Science and Technology Advisory Network. I think this is operating in ASEAN. For example, some universities are doing well here, UKM and Chulalongkorn. Next. Of course, we have examples at the national levels, the Academy of Science. I think we are very active in Malaysia in the SDG focused policies. And lately we have been talking about circular economy, for example. Yeah. And then we have University Malaya, Institute of Ocean and Earth Sciences. And this is contributing a lot to the UNCLOS negotiations. And also, a private university, Sunway University, has established the Jeffrey Sachs Center on SDGs. And they have actually established the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. I think the first chairman was Professor Zakri for this SDSN. Next. Number 2 is facilitating international research collaborations. Examples for international would be CERN. I think Malaysia is also an associate member since 2023. So we send scientists from UPM, USM to access particle physics data from them. You know? This is a good example. And then we have also the Southeast Asia One Health University Network. And I think UPM leads the Malaysians node. Yeah? Next. And then we also have at the national level example of the Newton Engku Omar Fund. So I think this is a very good example where we bring in developed countries and developing countries together for the purpose of scientific collaborations. Another example is the Global Science and Innovation Advisory Council, which was established through MITE. And the example which is happening right now is the establishment of this international, well, we have established it 2 years ago, the International Institute of Science, Diplomacy and Sustainability at UCSI University. Next slide. 3, training future science diplomat. You know, I think they have a lot of universities now interested in training what we will call science diplomats, those who will be sitting in the negotiation tables to bring together science and also policy for achieving the goods of sustainable development, for example. At the regional level, we have the Asia Pacific Science Diplomacy online course. Next. And at the national level, we have IDFR, the Institute of Diplomacy and Foreign Relations, which are also interested in using diplomacy, not science diplomacy alone, but diplomacy as well, to forge these scientific collaborations with other countries. Yeah? And we have also contributions from UKM on the science communication program. And third one is the EU Malaysia Climate Governance Project by the Monash University. Next. Number 4, advocating for science-based policymaking. We have examples like the International Science Council. I think they have advised WHO during the pandemic, you know. So, and then they have also the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN, the area. Next. Next, Annie. And then at the national level, we have the USM Tropical Infectious Disease Center, and we also have the Malaysian chapter of the Global Research Council, hosted by the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. And then we have also the nature-based solutions at Sunway University. Yeah, next. These are examples, of all the roles that academia play. And then last one is the promoting public engagement. I think AAAS has been doing very well in this area. In fact, AAAS has been promoting science diplomacy for many years. And we also have at the regional level, the ASEAN Foundation's Youth Science Diplomacy Forum. Next one, next slide. And at the national level, we have the examples like Petroscience University Technology Petronas, and then we have the Academy of Science initiative called Science Media Center Malaysia, and also I think this is maybe still on, this public-private partnerships between the ministry and also Sunway. So if you can see, we didn't have much time to go into this, but there are a lot of examples of the roles of academia in building the science diplomacy. Next. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail, but in a similar way, research can do this, So we have examples at an international level, regional level, in facilitating international scientific collaboration. In ASEAN, I think we are the chairman of ASEAN this year, and I think we should play a very proactive role, especially through coming out with new initiatives, like through this ASEAN Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation. I think we have been discussing a lot, but we are looking forward for COSTI to actually look at how we can expand the scope of science diplomacy from just in Malaysia to the ASEAN region in the years to come. Next. So these are another example from at the national level of the research. Next. Advancing science-based policy and diplomacy. So again, here an example of IPCC and also the APEX policy partnership on science, technology and innovation. Next. And here we have the contributions by the Academy of Sciences as an advisor to the government, for example, on STEM, biotechnology, green energy, and so on. And also, like several universities, they contribute also to the other kind of research. Yeah, ISIS is another example where it integrates science into foreign policy dialogues, such as the maritime security in the South China Sea. Next. The third role would be building capacity and knowledge exchange. Of course, everybody knows about this Fulbright Scholar Program from US. We are hoping to get Professor Paul Bergman to come on board on this program to help enhance our science diplomacy program at UCSI University. Hopefully, not much change will happen to this, knowing that it is quite tricky with the new president of US. Yeah. Next, And then we have also other examples at the national level. In fact, I just picked it up somewhere from USM. USM is also interested in the global science diplomacy, you know. So I think you can see that many players can come into fold. Next. And last, not last, number 4 is promoting science for peace and conflict resolution. It's very important. I think has been mentioned by Professor Zakri, during the Cold War, politicians are not talking to other politicians from the two countries, but not the scientists. Scientists are the link, you know, even though countries are at war. Yeah. So I think this idea of using science diplomacy for peace and conflict resolution is very critical. I think there are some areas, for example, the South China Sea, which has become a very heated issue, and maybe it's possible, you know, to bring the temperature down through science diplomacy. Next. And again, like I said, enhancing national reputation. I think the more we do research, I think the more we get benefits from research. But of course, the prestige of becoming a developed country is looming if we have a lot of research that we do. Next. Okay, I think we have a few more minutes. So now that you know, academia is very important and research is also very important. So do we have the ingredients there to make it happen, you know? So what we are talking about is, are we ready to give the full shot for science diplomacy? So let us look at the higher education metrics that we have. We want to compare Malaysia with other Asian counterparts, and we also want to see what kind of research we have been doing. And finally, we want to zero in on the specific initiative by UCSI in developing science diplomacy. Next. Okay, I'm sure you can read the small print, but you can actually compare Malaysia with China, Japan, South Korea, India, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So if you look at universities per million people, we are doing very well. You know? So we have a lot of enrollment, you know, inclusivity compared to many other countries. Of course, Japan and South Korea and China, they are much ahead of us. In terms of research output, we are doing quite well compared to other countries. In terms of government spending also, we have been given good money for the universities. And we have good percentage of graduate students coming to Malaysia. If you compare to other countries, perhaps like Singapore, Singapore attracts much more, but I think we are just behind Singapore. And the student-faculty ratio is quite good for us. So meaning the higher education systems that we harbor in Malaysia is well poised, you know, to develop this science diplomacy forward. Yeah. Next. Okay, so there's a key points that that I would like to touch one or two. I think Malaysia is leading in research and international students. I think there's a big plus for that. And higher, and also we have good ranking. You know, I think many of our universities are quite well ranked. Yeah. Of course, in Malaysia, we have a lot more public universities, compared to the public. Public universities, we have 20, whereas private universities, we have 50. So maybe private universities can contribute more towards transdisciplinary research and also nation building. Next. Okay, so this is a summary of the research that we have for Malaysia compared to countries like Singapore, South Korea, Japan, China, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And again, Malaysia ranks #1 in ASEAN for universities and innovation after Singapore, in terms, because some of this research, they are embedded within university system. So there are independent research institutions that are also research within universities. That's why research is also important coming from universities, and so on. Next. So if you look at the strengths of research in Malaysia, like I said, Malaysia leads in university ranking, in global innovation, and also publications. We are doing very well. And then our maybe a downside of it is that maybe we have a very small amount of R&D spending, compared to countries like Korea, Japan, and Singapore. So if we can actually increase that component, would be good for us to contribute more. Next. So I hope my 30 minutes of explanation get you to where I think is important is how do we move this science diplomacy forward. So you look at some of the recent global initiatives, So for example, we have the European framework on science diplomacy, I think just last year. So we have been talking about science diplomacy for the last 2 or 3 years, but now we know that Europeans are very much interested in science diplomacy. Last month, UNESCO had this ministerial meeting on science diplomacy. And of course, I must mention that we have Prof. Zakri, who has been very instrumental in getting this UCSI-IISDS off the ground. So it took more than 3 years before we can actually see the fruits of his work, and some other examples here. Next. Okay, this is the European framework for science diplomacy. Next. And I think the EU is interested to strengthen the science diplomacy agenda because they need to bring it into the negotiation table, So, and then the focus area include climate change, global health, and also digital governance. And of course, Europe, EU is very famous for its horizon in terms of the budget for research. Next. I think here is the snapshot of the UNESCO Global Ministerial Dialogue on Science Diplomacy last month. I think more than 60 ministers attended the dialogue. So this is a big push for science diplomacy, not only here, but in many countries. Next. Okay, I think Next. Okay, so we've been talking about science diplomacy everywhere. Yeah? And closer to home, I think I need to give you some information about the UCSI-IISDS. This is actually the new institute of science diplomacy and sustainability that was established at UCSI University, was launched by the former foreign minister. And we had brought in a lot of thought leaders into helping out to move the agenda on science diplomacy faster. So we have the high-level dialogue here that coincided with the launch of the institute. Next. Next. And we have a lot of publications. I mentioned one just now, but I think Prof. Zakri has been very productive in putting in his ideas into publications. And these are good for people to really understand what is going on. And I mentioned about high-level dialogue with prominent figures. Next. And also, we have forged a collaboration with the International Institute of Science, Diplomacy and Sustainability. The Institute of Diplomacy and Foreign Relations, IDFR, under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we actually train some of the middle level diplomats, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yeah. Next. And recently, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs awarded UCSI-IISDS a program called Science Diplomacy for the Global South. And this is a 10-day program for the Global South, but because of the funding limitations, they will start this year in August, but exclusively for participants from the African region. But of course, this will be opened up for other countries later on. So I think we have received a lot of accolades from the ministry. I think they believe that science diplomacy is not something intangible, but something that can actually be used to further our interest in achieving the sustainable development. Yeah. Next. So I hope I have not been too brief, but let me say that if we do a lot of analysis on how much we already have in terms of academia and how much we have from research, I think we are more than ready to actually move forward in this very interesting area of science diplomacy. So, but we still need academia, we still need research institutions, because they're very important for us to keep this science diplomacy alive. And again, like I've given some examples, collaborative efforts are critical. We don't want to be talking about collaboration only in Malaysia, but maybe with other countries. I think this effort by ASEF, the Asia Europe Foundation, is very. We are thankful, to see that this kind of session is happening, and I think we can go much further than this, yeah. And we believe that Malaysia can lead in the regional science diplomacy. I think we have the people, we have the academia, we have the research to do that. So I hope I have done some justice. At least if you don't remember anything that I said after my title, at least you have learned something about science diplomacy. So it's not diplomacy and it's not science advice. And it is a tool that we can use to achieve many of the good things that of achieving this sustainable development. Yeah. So maybe I've taken about 1 hour. Maybe if you have any questions, can you read?
Thank you very much, Prof. Mohammed, for this really insightful introduction. I think it's safe to say that I think everyone has learnt definitely much more than just your name. And we've learned a huge amount from in understanding, Malaysia's role, or the role of academia and research in Malaysia's ecosystem of science and technology diplomacy. And it's really wonderful to see how many different initiatives and international collaborations in this space between academic institutions and research institutions in Malaysia with other countries as well. So it's really, really wonderful to see. Next, then, I think we can move forward to our panel discussion and Q&A segment of today's session. For this, I will ask Prof. Mohammed to stay on the screen as I invite our expert panelists to join us for the discussion. So first, let me introduce Prof. Khatijah Binti Yusof, who is currently a professor at University Putra Malaysia, UPM. Prof. Khatijah is a senior fellow and council member at the Academy of Sciences, Malaysia, ASM, vice president of the Islamic World Academy of Sciences, and vice president of the World Academy of Sciences, TWAS. She also sits on the Council of Scientific Advisors of the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. She previously sat on the Board of Trustees of International Livestock Research Institute, CMEO Biotrop Governing Board, the Advisory Board for La Trobe Asia, and the Technical Advisory Panel for ComSats, as well as several companies and organizations in Malaysia. And in 2008, she was seconded to the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, Malaysia, serving as the Deputy Secretary General for Science. Her research and innovation has received great acclaim nationally and internationally. She was honoured by the Horton Trust to deliver the third Horton Lecture in 2002 and was later accorded the UNESCO's Carlos Finlay Prize for Microbiology in 2005. Actually, in 2014, she was identified as one of the top 20 most influential women in science in the Islamic world by MuslimScience.com, which is a huge achievement. Next up, we have Prof. Abi Veerakumarasivam, the Provost and Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Sunway University and a molecular geneticist known for his work in genetics, bioethics, and science communication. Prof. Abi is a strong advocate for public science engagement. He was the chair of the International Network for Government Science Advice, INGSA, Asia, and a member of several global advisory bodies on research integrity and responsible innovation. Prof. Abi's academic background spans cancer genomics and precision medicine, and he has contributed to advancing ethical frameworks in biotechnology and science diplomacy. He's also a TEDx speaker and frequent keynote presenter who emphasizes democratizing science and strengthening the role of scientific evidence in policy making. His work continues to influence science advice mechanisms and education policies across Southeast Asia. Next, we have Prof. Dr. Mohammed Rajudan, an adjunct professor at the UCSI University's International Institute for Science, Diplomacy and Sustainability, and senior associate at the Malaysia Industry Government Group for High Technology. Prof. Kushari has had a distinguished career in science as a researcher, educator, administrator, and a diplomat. He was the former executive director of the Coral Triangle Initiative on Coral Reefs, Fisheries and Food Security from 2019 to 23, and the founding chair of the Regional Coral Triangle Conservation Fund Board of Directors. With an extensive experience in marine conservation and regional cooperation, he brings valuable insights into biodiversity management and policy advocacy. And then last, but absolutely not least, I would like to welcome Prof. Surinder Pal Kaur Chanan Singh, a professor and the Dean of the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics at the University Malaya, Malaysia. Prof. Surin holds a PhD from Lancaster University, UK, and her expertise lies in critical discourse studies and multimodality, with research interests spanning discrimination and prejudice, particularly in the context of migration, Islamophobia, far-right extremism, terrorism, gender, and sexuality. Currently, her work centers on climate change communication and education, reflecting her commitment to addressing pressing global challenges. She is also the co-chair of the University Malaya Committee for Climate Change, which functions as a part of the Advisory Panel for Climate Change for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. She is currently the Dean of the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics in and she's also the Vice Chair for the Malaysian Language Deans Council and is leading the task force for all public universities on technology-enhanced language learning. Beyond academia, she's also actively involved in capacity building initiatives for Punjabi and Sikh youth in Malaysia, fostering leadership and community development. So you will have heard all about our esteemed panelists, a huge amount of accreditations and experience. So we are very excited to hear from you. Thank you all for your time and for accepting our invitation to join us today. And at this point, I would like to hand the floor back to Prof. Mohammed to lead the panel discussion. Prof. Mohammed, please.
Well, thank you very much, Freya. I would like to invite again all the 4 panelists. I think these are big names in Malaysia. And we are very happy for you to be in this panel discussion. But because of time constraint, you may think 1 hour is too long, but once we start talking, I think the time will just go very fast. So I hope during the interaction, please be concise and also spend less time on the issues, but straightforward to the questions that we'll have for the panels. Yeah. So maybe to start the round on the panel discussion, I would like to have this question addressed to all the panelists. So if you can see the screens, okay, but if not, I will read the question for all of you. And later on, I would like Prof. Khatijah to respond first, followed by Prof. Abi, and then Prof. Kushari, and last but not least, Prof. Surin. Yeah. So I hope you have listened to the lecture which I presented just now. If not, it's okay, because you have a lot of experience on your own. So the question is, from your own professional experience, what are some of the key challenges in enhancing collaboration between academia? I think we have all of the panelists here from academia. Of course, Prof. Kushari also come from the research institutions, and diplomatic actors in advancing science and technology diplomacy. So what would be your what would you say, in terms of addressing some of these challenges? And could you also share any successful examples where such collaboration has worked particularly well? So is it clear, or do you want me to read the question again? Okay. Can I call upon Prof. Khatijah, your first response?
Thank you, Prof. Mohammed. From my experience, I think the main problem is the discussion, sorry, somebody came into my room. One of the biggest challenges is actually we operate in different ways because we are not communicating in the right way. Because the academics, we tend to do long-term research. We want to get our answers correct. So we always expect to do things properly and take our time. And for the at the ministry and at the diplomatic level, they don't want it. They want the quick wins. And I think one of the ways that we had an experiment was that I was seconded to the Ministry of Science as the Deputy Sec-Gen for 5 years. And although I was so frustrated many times, I think that it worked well. I could understand what the policymakers wanted and what the academics wanted. We had a lot of academics in the ministry then. They have been seconded and we work well together. The other thing is, I think, is the communication. And we need more people like Abi here, who is a science communicator, and also people who can translate what the scientists do to simple language and sort of disseminate our ideas to the public. We also need to have access and trust. These are very big issues, and I'm having problem with this. But I can say this, one of the other success that I can say proudly was that in 2021, I helped organize a science diplomacy workshop here in Malaysia with the Academy of Sciences Malaysia, with TWAS and with AAAS. Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic, so we had to do it online. Can you see this? This is, I managed to retrieve it from my computer. So what we did was we brought the scientists, the policymakers, the diplomats together from across the region. We had about 50 over participants. Unfortunately, they couldn't come. We wanted to bring them to IDFR and have a chat and talk to the diplomats there as well and try and discuss how we can do projects together. But I basically think that it was a little bit of a success. Another one is actually Academy of Sciences Malaysia. They had platforms like Foresight Studies and the National Science Policy Consultations. Academy of Science is the think tank for us. And one of the things that I liked was the 10-10 My STIE framework. That was really good, and the model is being used by various countries. So in summary, to be short, we need to have mutual understanding with each other. We need to create safe spaces for dialogues, but we need to work together and invest in building up relationships over time so that we can trust each other to move forward. I think that's all. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought, yeah, I mean, I have to say, Abi, because I know he's the next speaker.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Khatijah. Just one question. In your course that you did with Academy of Sciences, do you have a good mix of academia, research institutions, and diplomatic access?
Yeah, we had that, Prof. Zakri, Tan Sri Saleh were there. And then we had also people from other countries as well. And, one of the initiatives that we talk about during that workshop was the Coral Triangle Initiative.
Oh, okay.
About that, right? I brought a lot of things because I was at MOSTI before that. And so I had a lot of experience with the various other initiatives around. So I liked it, but the unfortunate thing is we couldn't get we couldn't meet physically because of the pandemic. But since then, I have been working with AAAS. 2 years ago, we had a workshop in Trieste, where we discuss about how can we improve the safety in the development of biological weapons using AI. You know, now you can do all sorts of strange, terrible research with potential devastating outcomes. So we wanted to see how we can work together with the legal advisors, the lawyers, the diplomats, and also with the scientists, not only the biological scientists, but also those with AI, to see what sort of way or how can we put some guidelines to make sure that this world is safe.
Thank you, Prof. Khatijah. I
Okay.
think very good response there. I think it is good to note that a lot of people are interested in this science diplomacy.
Yeah, there are lots. I think AAAS is having it regularly with tours. So anyone can apply, but I find that it was so difficult. That's why I decided to have the workshop in Malaysia, because I think years before we had only 1 or 2 of our Malaysians that can attend, selected to attend because of so many people. Yeah.
Okay. Now I call upon Prof. Abi for the same question.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof. Muhammad Osman, and also Freya and ASEF for this invitation. At the risk of repeating what Prof. Khatijah has alluded to, and I think, since she flattered me, I think I also need to be diplomatic and also allude to the fact that, she's one of those individuals who actually transcended both academia and, being in the policy space. And just to add on to what she said, I think the issue here is, I think all of us, both parties, have common aspirational visions. But the reality is the academic and diplomatic actors typically have differing priorities and goals. And I know I risk overgeneralization, but I think you've heard from Tan Sri Zakri and Sir Peter Gluckman that, generally the reason why academia and research organizations are, very good at what we do is because we prioritize knowledge generation, innovation, and theoretical advancements beyond, applications and various different other efforts. And so as a result, our goals are usually long-term with an emphasis on generation of knowledge and bridging the gaps or what we perceive as knowledge gaps. But diplomatic actors, on the other hand, are typically more interested in national interests, policies, and immediate geopolitical outcomes. And perhaps what is happening out there with the tariff wars perhaps manifests this geopolitical outcomes prioritization of diplomatic actors. And so as a result, what the actors actually prioritize as what they think as value is very, very different. And these gaps in priorities make it really challenging to align the expectations and motivations of the different actors. And I thought, Prof. Osman, thank you very much for giving a really good primer of the differences between science diplomacy, science advice. But the reality is, it's actually having two parties that have common goals, but as a result of a few systematic challenges stemming from different priorities are unable to come together. Another big issue, and I think it's really important in this part of the world, really is the bureaucratic hurdles. For most academic actors, we get into science because we care about a particular problem, and we then invest for the rest of our lives trying to focus on that particular problem and actually help to advance knowledge in these areas. But in many, many institutions or countries, such as Malaysia, many bureaucrats or diplomats generally are going to move from one sector or ministry over a period of time. As a result, their priorities might be climate change for 5 years, and then maybe into the health ministry. And they've seen that as career diplomats progress in their careers, they are not able to focus on specific areas that perhaps academics have that longer span. And so one big area is diplomatic institutions and large research organizations are heavily bureaucratic. Academic institutions are also guilty because we have complex structures and very slow decision-making processes, which delay some of the initiatives and priorities. While diplomatic actors or bodies generally have very rigid protocols, a lengthy negotiation cycles, and this results in collaboration becoming sometimes a bit more difficult. And so there is that lack of mutual understanding that Prof. Khatijah actually alluded to. But I wanted to just add two other factors that I think is equally important. Especially in this part of the world, and when we're talking about science diplomacy, where it actually involves different parties that extend, out of the, across the globe, resources is an important factor. Very often, resource constraints is a major factor, and you've seen that through what Prof. Osman talked about. While higher education, Malaysia does well. When you look at the gross expenditure for research and development, it's a very small percentage, and a small percentage of even smaller amount per capita. And so there is that deficit in capacity, there is deficit in the amount of effort that certain countries can actually put into in either fundamental or applied or experimental development research. So these funding models within academia as a result often don't directly align with the diplomatic initiatives. And I agree what Prof. Khatijah mentioned, the Malaysian Science, Technology, Innovation and Economy metrics of aligning the science with the economic priorities of a nation, perhaps is the first step of trying to align these priorities with the resource constraints that we actually have. But an emerging problem that we also face that's complicating science diplomacy is the IPs and security concerns. What we are seeing now, the tensions between America and China, are really being manifested in the laboratories. I was in Arizona just last week, and you can see that a lot of collaboration on cutting-edge technologies that were happening seamlessly 10 years ago can no longer happen because certain countries are concerned with the priorities of other countries. And so as a result, are a little bit more averse in terms of sharing scientific data that is perceived to be sensitive or technological advancements that could perhaps be threat to democracies around the world. So this, dimension, of the geopolitical tensions within the context of security concerns, or perhaps even IP concerns, where there could be that issue of diplomacy being the source of greater inequalities economically or security. But some of the successes that I think we need to talk about, and perhaps we could agree in the next questions, is what can we do? Why is it that the EU Horizon 2020 is a success? Why is the Newton Unku Omar program that actually allowed for really important research that had relevance in the UK and Malaysia supported for a fairly long period of time?
Okay. Well, I think thank you very much, Prof. Abid. I know you have a lot of things to say. Especially you were heading INSA Asia for a while, isn't it? But maybe later on, if you have time, I'll come back to you. Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Abi. Can I now move on to Prof. Kushari?
Thank you very much to Professor Osman, my colleague. I also would like to thank Asia Europe for inviting me to be the panelist. We are talking about the scientists and also the diplomats. Yeah, scientists, as mentioned by Professor Khatijah as well as also Professor Abi. I was also a scientist. Scientists do have their own niche. Yeah, we have our own language among us. Yeah, and when we present our research findings, we are passing through another scientist actually. Yeah, so these are the constraints of some scientists. Also, they need fund for research, and that grant dependence, and some of these grant donors. They have their own objective too for giving grants and what they want. Yeah, so there are time frame given to us. There are also a significant amount of funds allocated to us. in a manner for us to run the research. And the diplomats, you call it the person with diplomatic actors. They are not diplomatic actors. They are diplomats. You know, they have their own work. They run the responsibility that given to them. Particularly, they are representing a country, and they're representing the government. So they have their own political constraints for them to work on. They are concentrating on international relations, and also they are working for on the basis of mutual understandings and also geopolitics as well. So these two never meet before. But following Paris Agreement in 2015, in particular, I'm showing you, although they are already there, but how this occurrence has been very strong. Yeah. Following that, there are SDGs coming in, Sustainable Development Goals, and you can see now where the scientists and together with the policymakers are hand in hand, are working together. This is how it is to be. These are the challenges has been now become not really key challenges now. They are working together, as you can see. So as long as when a research scope is big and the objective is given clearly, scientists usually now engage also some diplomats and also some policymakers to work with.
Okay, Prof. Kushari, I didn't want to stop you, but I just want to make a correction. I think in the question, the diplomatic actors are not meant as actors. You know, I think these are the players. I think, yeah, it could be ambassadors and so on.
Yeah, the players. Yeah. Thank you. This I give you an example of ICRI. There is International Coral Reef Initiatives, which was already exist before in Australia. The chair is also Australia. Now the chairmanship is the US. This ICRI organization has more than 20 countries memberships, if I'm not mistaken. It includes also research institutions and also regional organizations. So each of these, there are many scientists, particularly representing the countries and also regional organizations. So they work on coral reef conservation as well as also coral reef ecosystem in each country as well as also in globally, as well as also globally. So when one is already issues coming up, scientists will group together to discuss the problems, how to face it, and this is brought to the regional level, as well as also now it becomes a big issue now, particularly to the United Nations meeting on biodiversity, as well as also the climate change issues. So this is an example of strong collaborations between scientists, as well as also how scientists diplomatically can bring to the diplomats and also finally reaching the policymakers.
Can I interject, Prof. Kushari? Can you consider CTI as a successful example of such collaboration?
Yeah, I have, but I reserve it to the next one because it will be very long if I elaborate on CTI because I was the head of the secretariat. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Hani, Prof. Kushari. Okay, we have for this round Prof. Surin, but before I call upon Prof. Surin, I must make it very clear when I talk about science. Science include both the natural sciences and also the social sciences. I think this is where I think Prof. Surin can actually contribute in the discussion. So I call upon now Prof. Surin for your response.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Muhammad. Thank you so much to ASEF. Thank you so much to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. What I'd like to say is, yes, I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues, able colleagues have already said about the key challenges. I also just want to add two main things here that will lead on to what I'm going to say. One is the metrics for success that we use in academia. That's almost always publications. However, you know, in diplomacy, in people want actionable solutions. They want speed and things like that. But at the same time, there is a huge communication gap. And this is because the sciences, in that sense, well, when we look at academia, we tend to think, and I'll be very honest here, we tend to think of academia as the sciences. The social sciences here are the ones that have to play their part. The universities have a perfectly good bridge between science and diplomacy, and that is social science and humanities. Social sciences and humanities are the ones, the glue that will connect the two together, because the social sciences, the humanities come from the aspect of looking at humanity, looking at social issues and so on and so forth. The scientists come and bring with their the studies, the findings, the solutions that you have. So what happens here is, I will give you an example of what we have at University Malaya, medical humanities. That is one aspect where we talk about public health issues and things like that. The Faculty of Medicine, the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics, and the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, we have come together to work in medical humanities and push forward the whole narrative of public health using science-based facts and figures. Now, there's a lot of misinformation out there. COVID-19 showed us that. There's so much misinformation out there, but it needs the humanities to come in to counter that in misinformation, because information can be twisted in any particular way. So social scientists are the ones that will be the ones to help address and provide the counter narratives, number one. They also are the ones who will help to bridge collaborations between academia and diplomacy. For example, when you need, you know, off the top of my head, something as simple as climate communication. It's the social scientists and humanities that can bridge that particular gap and provide that training for both sides. And I do think that it's very, very necessary for us to have this cross-platform kind of trust building that occurs. So universities can be the conveners, the apolitical conveners. And I've harked back to the beginnings of science diplomacy, which is coming from the Pugwash conference, where scientists actually said that they had a moral responsibility towards the world. And if we take that apart, you know, forward, and we launch diplomatic training programs for scientists, as well as science literary workshops for diplomats, and this is something we're already doing in the medical humanities, I think that will have a huge, huge change in the way that we can approach things and work together. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Prof. Surin, for your response there. I think we need a lot more social scientists, you know, to be involved in science diplomacy. You know, I think it's up and coming anyway.
Yes,
So
I mean, we do have, Prof, we do have now, it's not just the medical humanities, it has now come into the environmental humanities, the digital humanities, because without the humanities, it's impossible to move on. Yeah.
Okay, now we are going for the second round. I think we'll keep the response with the same way we did for round one. So we'll go first with Prof. Khatijah, and then followed by now Prof. Kushari. Third one, Prof. Abi. For now, Prof. Surin is still the last one, but it's okay. I think if we can have enough time for round three, you'll be the first one. Okay. This round two, we have 4 different questions for each panelist. So I think the first question for Prof. Khatijah is, in your experience, what formal platforms or institutional mechanisms have been most effective in enabling academia to actively engage in science policy making in Malaysia? I think you're the right person, Prof. Khatijah. Could you highlight best practices, where these structures have helped shape national or regional policies. Will that be okay, Prof. Khatijah? Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah. Are you okay now? Can you
Repeat the
see me?
question?
No, I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's exactly what I said just now. I think the most important platform maybe is the Academy of Sciences Malaysia, because in Academy, we have not only the scientists, but we also have the policy makers to be actually fellows of the Academy, and also the social scientists and humanities, and also those people who are active in science, science development. They're all in there. So through SM, we can actually help shape the various national SDI strategies. They do foresight planning, and we work on policies. And in fact, we are drafting the National Science Act. This act has been in the draft for more than 10 years, but we are still hoping that we can actually have it submitted. And I said before, and one of the things I like was the 1010 My SDIE framework, because it sort of makes everyone, not only the scientists, but those policy makers, appreciate what SDI is all about. How can SDI help in the economic output of or impact of the country. So, because it maps out the technology drivers with the socio-economic sectors of Malaysia, then we can focus on that. We try and map together and see, and I think that's very good. Another mechanism that works well would be those various joint committees, technical committees, task forces, or national councils under the various ministries. These platforms allow the scientists to advise on policy. For example, when we had the pandemic, we had actually a group of us in a committee that we were trying to work out who to get the vaccination first and how do we go about it. And then we can talk about vaccine diplomacy as well. And also we are working now on the digital transformation. As I said before, the workshop that I ran on science diplomacy was very successful. And because it was during the pandemic, it showed how important it is to build capacity, not just in research, but in how scientists can communicate and collaborate with the policymakers and the diplomats. I think
Okay.
the other thing, Prof, another thing, last thing, is the Malaysia Open Science Alliance, which promotes science that's transparent, and it can be useful for the decision makers.
Okay.
So engagement, long-term relationship, invest in science communication, and make friends with everyone. Okay.
Thank you, Prof. Khatijah. Good. Now, Prof. Kushari. Prof. Kushari, from your perspective, what are some best practices for ensuring that academic research is translated into policy-relevant knowledge? Could you share concrete examples where research findings were successfully communicated and taken up by policymakers?
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Osman. I am giving you the perspective of answering these questions through two big organizations. Number one is based on the Coral Triangle Initiative, CTI, CFF, that is for coral reef, fisheries, and food security. This organization has its own secretariat, Regional Secretariat, where I was the executive director. And this NCC, this CTI, is a form of organization of 6 countries, 3 ASEAN countries, there is Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines, and 3 Pacific Oceania countries, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Island, and Timor-Leste. It consists of developing countries, nations, as well as also least developed countries, nation. And based on these organizations is based on the coral conservation. So there are some rules and regulations which are different from each country and has to be agreed regionally to come up with certain policy. So how it works? It works each country has its own national committee, national CTI committee, and this representative is usually from the ministry, the government organization. So when there is an issue, this working group will be formed. For example, a working group on IUU, the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries, or working group on coral conservation. So this is formed by each country inviting the government personnel as well as also the scientists from that country to represent the working group. That's how they work. And they will come up to certain regulations, certain agreement within that country, which the ministry brought to the minister, even to the highest level in the country, whether to accept it not to be incorporated into the regional plan of action. So that's how it works. The scientists come together, the government people come together, they agree at the highest level of the country and brought it up down to discuss in the coral reef and the coral triangle initiative. So this is a very good example of how scientists come together, relay the message to policymakers, they agree, and not only in national level, but also come to the regional level to come up with certain policy that are agreeable within the six countries.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Kushari. Now we go to Prof. Abi. I think
I'm not finished yet. One more.
Oh, you're not finished yet.
Yes. One more organization is where I am in now. I am the senior associate of mine. It's Malaysian Industry Government High Technology. I see this organization is a very strong organization in terms of working together scientifically as well as also to the policy makers. For example, right now I was also involved in the Malaysia Smart City Outlook, where we incorporate, where this organization incorporated the experts on cities, the NGOs, the industrial players, the universities, scientists and architects and everything and everybody involved with the city's development will sit together and also to come up with certain agreement in the creation of Malaysia's smart city, which is brought under, which is being tailored into even the United Nations fund. So this is how the two organizations works well in this aspect.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Kushari. Now we go to Abi, Prof. Abi.
Sure. Thank you, Professor.
You have read that question, or
I have.
You?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Carry on, sorry.
No, you have been inside Asia chairman, so you have a lot of international exposure. Yeah. So the question is, how have international collaborations already strengthened Malaysia's science diplomacy efforts? Yeah. And what best practices can you highlight from academic institutions that have successfully contributed to the global partnerships and the mutual diplomatic goals? I think you are the right person to answer, probably.
Yeah, thanks, Prof. Muhammad Osman. And I have to thank you. All the different examples that you gave us during your keynote really, epitomizes that international collaboration has been, an integral part of Malaysia's success in strengthening its science diplomacy. I think the number of collaborators that we actually have, our current role, in terms of even the anticipation of Malaysia's chairmanship as ASEAN chair, just tells you that a lot of the collaborations that has been fostered over the last decades have certainly positioned Malaysia as really this convening champion of many perhaps the countries in the global south. But in terms of scientific capacity, the international collaborations have also played a huge role. And you gave us some data showing that increase in research output. Of course, Prof. Surinder Paul, you're absolutely right. How does this research output correlate to actual outcomes is something that perhaps is a little tenuous. But the intensity of research capacity, in Malaysia and many of these Southeast Asian regions has certainly increased over the last 2 decades. And you can also see the number of publications based on the number of authors, where they come from, tells you that research has become more internationalized. And by actively engaging in multilateral and bilateral partnerships, Malaysia has not only advanced its scientific and technological capacities, but its diplomatic influence has also been improved. I've been involved through INSA Asia, and over the last few years, we've been organizing various different grassroots workshops, various different grants, and every single initiative where this collaboration has actually crossed the boundaries, you can see new friendships fostered, some of these prejudices or biases or perhaps misperceptions that we actually have of each other, is suddenly just broken down when you actually connect at an individual level. And that's why when you ask me, basically what are these successful examples, I can give you examples that have already, reaffirmed as examples given by Prof. Khatijah and Prof. Kushairi, MITE, Academy of Sciences Malaysia, that have really established some innovation hubs and research collaborations working on all these really important areas like smart cities, renewable energy, health tech, foresighting. But in the end, it actually goes down to who are the champions. And in Malaysia, we can't run away from the fact that the reason why we're talking about science diplomacy, science advice, is because we had an individual champion in Tan Sri Zakri, who took it upon himself to give opportunities to emerging young people like me 15 years ago to actually champion this, to believe that I had a voice that actually mattered. I'm not so sure whether it truly mattered 15 years ago or even now, but giving me the opportunity, right, and then making sure that holding me accountable, that I need to give opportunities to other people too, is really that part of improving that communication, building that trust. And together with individual champions, having institutional champions that put it as part of their charter, that their job is to actually enhance cooperation, MITE, ASM, right, and INSA are, I think, really examples of perhaps we can't measure many of these within maybe a 5 or 10 years. But when you think about the relationships that have actually been fostered, how those relationships have influenced how these individuals operate within their ministries in different countries, I'm pretty certain the intangibilities are really, really very powerful. And that is why, as a university like Sunway and UCSI, we see ourselves that we, although work slightly away from the science advice platform, we believe that as knowledge generators, we have that responsibility to actually engage with our collaborators. Even if these collaborators don't have a direct link to the diplomatic actors, by sheer generating activities, you can see that government analysts will actually be measuring many of these activities as examples of activities and collaborations and these relationships that perhaps we can call it trivial, individual small projects, research projects, or even a big part of university is actually being home to hundreds of thousands of students from 200 countries, and that's Malaysia. that opportunity for students to experience Malaysia because they're here for an educational experience is also perhaps sometimes not necessarily captured. And I think I will end here with what Prof. Surinder Paul alluded to earlier, that perhaps sometimes our inability to broaden what we actually measure as success sometimes trivializes many of those important human connections that actually exist, that perhaps we are a lot more peaceful than some politicians may actually allude to.
Well, thank you so much, Prof. Abi. You sound like a politician, Prof. Abi.
I'm not sure whether that's a compliment, but today we're talking about science diplomacy. It's a huge compliment. Thank you, Prof. Osman.
No, I think in the science diplomacy, it is an integral part. The policy making is very important. So we can actually elevate our contributions in a way that can be easily understood by politicians. I think that's very important. Okay, thank you, Prof. Abi. Now we go to Prof. Surin next. This is the era of AI. So the question is, as AI continues to evolve, how have Malaysian academic and research institutions contributed to ethical and inclusive AI development, particularly in the context of science diplomacy? Are there any standout examples or best practices you can share that could serve as a model for others? Prof. Surin, a lot of now things are revolving around AI are the bad things. Is there any good thing for science diplomacy at all?
For sure. For sure, Prof. I think more and more the academic and research institutions, we've been playing an increasingly active role in ensuring that ethical and inclusive AI development, it's not just a technical ambition, but it's a priority where diplomacy is concerned. So the key thing here is the integration of ethical, cultural, and societal considerations into AI. If that's missing from the very onset, then if it becomes an afterthought, that's when we get into problems, and then AI becomes bad. So we need to put that into place. So we're not just the builders of AIs, but we're the architects of how AI is being used. So in this case, it's very closely tied to what science diplomacy's goal is: leveraging knowledge for peace, for shared progress. So there are three main things I'd like to point out. One is that our universities, we are already uniquely positioned to provide independent critical research. And this is research that can shape governance frameworks away from commercial pressure, political pressure. So in this case here, what our universities are doing is it not just identifies what AI can do, but what it should do. And that's the key thing here. Some of the universities, like University of Malaya, some of our research is focused on leading frameworks for ensuring transparency, accountability, non-discrimination, and protection of human rights. So there's rigorous research already on bias, accountability, and transparency on AI systems. And this is something that we need to put forward, again, with science diplomacy, to make sure that this is put into place as a governance system. And the other thing is, we shouldn't just look at the global problems where AI is concerned, but there must be smaller. In Malaysia, we have hundreds of indigenous communities, and these are all underrepresented communities, and major corporations always overlook them. So algorithm biases marginalizes these communities even further. So what we do at my faculty is we've launched interdisciplinary initiatives to bring together computer scientists, ethicists, linguists, legal scholars, as well as social scientists to look at AI systems, large language models, where we focus on Southeast Asian languages, the indigenous languages, the non-dominant linguistic languages, and we ensure that they're not marginalized in the global AI development context. Key thing here is we are the platform for inclusive dialogue. So we need to bring everybody in. You're not just corporation or engineers. We are social scientists, policymakers, and the communities who are affected by these technologies. Science diplomacy demands that we bring these people in and focus on them as well. And finally, education. Our core business is teaching our students. So basically, a culture of responsibility starts in our classroom. And this is some of the things we're already doing, not just teaching students, but embedding ethics and public interest. You don't just code machine learning models, but you also train them to ask, well, who can this harm? whose voices are not being captured here, whose voices are missing. And these are some of the things that we are already doing. So I would like to just end by saying a few things on, AI is not just a Malaysian thing. It's not a domestic issue. It's a trans-boundary issue. It's a global, fundamentally, it's a global issue. So how one country regulates AI for facial recognition, health diagnosis, will affect another country. There's no global agreement, and there's lots and lots of mistrust. So different regions have different values. So academia, we can act as the bridge. We foster conversations and in the development and deployment of AI. So some of the works we've done is with the ASEAN Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, where we have shared policy recommendations, and there's also with UNESCO where we look at. But one best practice I want to really highlight is the multi-stakeholder engagement model. UM has already done it. I know some of the other universities are also doing it. So we're not just engaging academics, policymakers, but civil society organizations, indigenous communities. These are the people who AI is actually going to impact upon. So this inclusivity is not theoretical, practiced from ground up. So a challenge isn't just about developing AI, it's developing the right kind of AI, the right kind of future. And this is where academia comes in to lead, to teach, to ensure that technology serves everyone equally. I'll just end by saying that AI is not a tool. It's actually a mirror of our values. And academia is not just a bystander. We are the glue between innovation and humanities values. So if we want any ethical AI, then academia must play its role in order to make sure that we actually put forward those ideas and we put the challenges and we govern these things ourselves. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor. Nowadays, I'm using a lot of ChatGPT,
we all do.
DeepSeek. I think we are learning a lot more things than before. Yes. I hope with the advent of AI, we can get more people to use AI to understand better the science diplomacy. Okay, I think the time is envious of our work. We have only less than 10 minutes to go. So we're going to skip the third round question, but we'll go to the questions from the audience. I must thank all the audience. I think there's a lot of questions coming from them, but unfortunately, we don't have all the time to answer many of these, But there's one question, I think I will pose it to all the panelists. I hope Prof. Surin will answer first, because this one, the rest can follow from Prof. Khatijah, Prof. Abi, and Prof. Kushari. Yeah? So the question is, given the political nature of governance, I think you can see how US is behaving now, Given the political nature of governance, how can science diplomacy be effectively institutionalized within parliamentary, technocrats, and bureaucratic structures to ensure its long-term success? So it's a big question there. Maybe you start first, Professor Rin.
I think this is a really huge question. I would say it's not just one-pronged thing. Again, I go back to my final point earlier, multi-stakeholder engagement. If you want the parliamentarians, the technocrats, the bureaucrats to come on board, and as Prof. Abi said very, very, very aptly, we are inherently bureaucratic in many different ways. So we want them to come together. Then we must look at it like, if I may use an analogy, a spider web. And so science diplomacy is in the center of that spider web, but then it sends its tentacles all across to pull back all these different aspects. Only then we can ensure some kind of, well, I wouldn't say standardized, but we can ensure more multifaceted and more nuanced governance, which takes into account the ethics, the humanity, and the process of peace. So I would say, the science diplomacy is basically the glue that is going to bring together the parliamentarians, the technocrats.
Thank you, Professor Rin. Prof. Abi?
Yeah, I'll take on the first question too. I'll just add on to Prof. Surindapal's question, sort of answer. I think what's really important here is it's actually asking ourselves, how to be able to calibrate between local needs and actually global needs. Because really, when you're talking about science diplomacy, it is actually truly believing in this really appreciating the value of win-win in partnerships. What we're actually seeing in the tariff wars and what's actually happening around actual physical wars is, this idea of perhaps neoliberal capitalism, which is to win at at any cost. And I think that for me is the biggest tension with regards to science diplomacy. I really feel that we really need to embrace, and I just want to remind everyone, the greatest existential challenge is not necessarily whether we're going to actually have food on our table, but really what you alluded to, Prof. Muhammad, about SDGs, the climate change, these large issues that require, all parties and all countries coming together. So if there's anything, I really feel that number one, maybe I'm being a little optimistic here, is that we really need to be able to find policy instruments that can really balance between local and actually global needs. We need more politicians thinking about not just long term, but actually the greater good of the globe. So even when we think about human health, it's got to be about planetary health. When we think about our secure boundaries, it is also about other people's boundaries, because we are only safe if everyone is safe. COVID-19 virus taught us that. So for me, that's really, really important. I think in education, how we're training our students, it's not about how to be better than other people. It is about how to be better for other people. Only then we can actually assure this. I'll stop there.
Wow, I learned something from you today, Prof. Abi. 4 people, I think that's a key word there. Okay, Prof. Khatijah, your take? Prof?
I can come in while waiting for her.
Okay, you can come in, Prof. Kushari.
Right. In a very short way, I could elaborate more if there is a long time, is a duration longer. So one of the initiatives that is taken by UCSI-IISDS is promoting for the development of ASEAN Center for Science Diplomacy. We will see how this goes. We have taken the chance of the chairing the ASEAN for 2025. Maybe if this is a green light and the initiative will be brought up to the ASEAN meeting, we hope. Yeah, because this is important to cater as the questions proposed here, And from there also, from the ASEAN Center for Science Diplomacy, if it's fruit and then growth, if it is formed, and then from there we can, perhaps government is thinking about science attaché in every embassies, as well as also in consulates all over globally, So from there on, I think we can initiate this science diplomacy in the regional and global manner. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Kushari. Prof. Khatijah, I want you to respond, but at this dimension of how we can use ASEF, the Asia Europe Foundation, to help us resolve this question. Prof. Khatijah?
Yeah, I think the initiative by ASEF at the moment is really good. Maybe ASEF can work together with IISDS and set up a very cool curriculum on science diplomacy. What we need is actually education on science diplomacy. Maybe a lot of communication to the public, what science diplomacy is all about. How can we embed that and embrace science diplomacy in our curriculum in the university, as well as within the government, civil service? This is so important because we are looking at not only national boundary problems and issues and challenges, but we need to even look at how the solution on how can we address these challenges and so forth. So it is a lot of work, but we can start somewhere, and maybe we can start from this conversation that we're having now, ASEF and IISDS.
Thank you so much. I must also take this opportunity to thank all the audience for the questions and also the poll that you have actually responded. We have thrown in 6 questions, and unfortunately, we don't have much time to elaborate on the results of this poll. But looking at what I have seen shortly, I think many of participants here understand what science diplomacy, and that goes very well, for us. And so I think for the last few minutes, I just would like to close this interactive session by thanking the wonderful 4 panelists for your inputs. I think we have learned a lot from this discussion, and I think we can now move to another level of the development of science diplomacy, like was suggested by Prof. Khatijah. Maybe if I can urge some kind of proposal to bring in ASEF, to work together with UCSI-IISDS, that would be a good start. So I think in conclusion, I would like to thank everyone, all the participants who have spent your time listening to the lecture as well as the panel discussions. I think now I pass back the mic to Freya. Yeah, Freya?
Thank you so much, Prof. Mohammed, and to all of our wonderful, wonderful panelists. That was really, really interesting and insightful to hear from all of you. And definitely, I think there's so many opportunities for further collaboration between ASEF and IISDS, but also with Malaysian institutions, research and academic institutions, and lots of those around Asia and Europe, especially for those that are represented today in our attendees for this workshop. So with that, we are coming to a close for today's session. Unfortunately, but we really thank you all for joining us and for asking very interesting questions, which helped guided the discussions today for our panelists. We hope to see you next week for our 3rd and final session focused on Malaysia, where we will be looking at the role of businesses in the Malaysian science and technology diplomacy ecosystem and how to work with them. So on your screen, you will be able to see the QR code to sign up to this third workshop next week, as well as to our mailing list to be the first to hear when the next workshop series on the science and technology diplomacy ecosystems in Kazakhstan, Thailand, and Indonesia will be taking place in the coming months. So thank you very much all for joining us today, and we will see you again next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prof. Mohammed. Thank you, everyone.